Christina Universe Citizen presents New Era Eligion Episode 55, Part 1, May 29, 2022. Tolerance becomes a relative application. Any first-time observer who is tuning into this New Era Eligion podcast video could not possibly know all that has evolved in the process over decades of writing, with our Buckminster Fuller Synergetics explorations in the geometry of thinking as the primary referential generalized information resource. The Synergetics Table of Contents, Index, and Figure Index, listing all the illustrations of his geometric models, is available online for anyone's curiosity and clarity about what these essay podcast videos intends conveying as a comprehensive contribution to the universal communications process. It informs us of all that is otherwise missing concerning anticipatory reality. That which is missing also is omitted from the potential realizations of our intelligent species, humans of a mind, the eternal omniscient mind, Eon. The comparative observations are attributable to what is going on in the world, and whatever my memory recalls from the reenacting articulations, much of which is written about in variously provided content. The articulations are ever reenacted, as Bucky Fuller noted, and as I continue to realize. His omnicomprehensive thought was that the always reenacting articulations occur in hopes of reducing the tolerance magnitudes of the residual inaccuracies of observation or articulation, and so tolerance becomes a relative application from more than one perspective that correlates both to the manifest conditions and general systems thinking conceptualities. Those amongst us who want the world to tolerate what they believe despite its inherent contradictions to the nature of systems in universe, correlatively to the truth of us, rely on humanly made laws to support and defend those beliefs. Those among us who want to understand the field of cosmic form abilities, unity, and more about the most economical way systems of nature behave relative to unity in self and universe are more interested in the word tolerance correlating to reducing the tolerance magnitudes and comprehending truth as a relationship, a direction, and the product zero. So truth and the words we use, concepts we choose to generalize and also further explore, include unity and field to become, clarifying terminology, referential to the geometric models that anyone can conceptualize. We can do so without being inhibited and destroyed by belief complex delusional inputs. Many of those inputs historically are attributable to the PRJWBCS, politics, religion, justice, war, belief complex schemes. The schemes are of an interrelated contextual parameter as aspects of the detrimental scenarios devised by the human imagination that influences and convinces self and others whatever the belief complex objectives hope to achieve. If the hope was to reduce the tolerance magnitudes of its residual inaccuracies naturally, the metaphysical generalized conceptual field of thought would be the omnicomprehensive, interaccommodating, complementary operational environment of the evolving mind. But most of the belief complex schemes in our world, which usually are listed as religions, date back to the cradle of civilization, when the womb of permitted ignorance gave superficial birth to whatever the human imagination sensed as something greater than self. This is when the sound word God in any spoken or written language became the final judging dictator, who, according to local customs and local adaptations to the manifest forms, increasingly more authoritative and restricted authority valued and devalued the human being as a disposable entity. Emulated dispositions eventually justified eliminating the human life as a solution to every imaginable, temporarily unmanageable relationship problem. If omnicomprehensively considered instead, humans and the way systems behave would not need to resort to punitory value and punitory intentions that also justify building institutions to contain the irrationally induced relative insanity. The relative insanity has no awareness of the most economical way of behaving relative to unity in self and universe. Typically, those solutions are of the delusional mentality that destroys the human mind in the process of solving the local problem, which in most cases is an emulation of the punitory authority whose dominions of power emanate from the womb of permitted ignorance, when the subconscious, ignorantly fearful cautionaries were unaware of conceptual domains in the most comprehensively considered environments. Our 21st century consciously, knowledgeably competent observations recognize the concept dominion as the territory of a sovereign or government, but that when intellect generalizes concepts, its mental process admits general systems thinking, where domains can represent the generalized scenario as the most economical way of behaving relative to unity and self. Doing so would not feel compelled to manifest the W factor of the PRJWBCS as we are now witnessing in the world. It exemplifies the least economical way systems behave, where the territory of Russia perpetrated a massively destructive scenario, invading Ukraine, launching a large-scale escalating war that has been ongoing since 2014. The link to this headline is listed in the reference section at the end of the video podcast. Such authority, as we can observe by reading the news or volumes of books on the subject, count on the political mastermind and or the deity of choice to overrule freedom, correlatively to not recognizing the inherently inviolable integrity of the individual, thereby discrediting the individual and commanding conformity to the will of the ruling authority. That many places of worship of the divinity have been designated as hallowed grounds also provides a shield of protection against the outside parameters, which is a safeguard humans also expect for their homes against the invading authority that historically attempts to break and enter, search and seize by decree, with or without a warrant so to do. This is an ongoing battle between humanity's individual inherent right to be let alone and every encroaching authoritative subjection that is so convoluted in law-making power, it becomes more confusing to the order-seeking mind that intuits a differently referenced supreme intelligence that is not of the PRJWBCS. Therefore, we will not learn more about Eom, the eternal omniscient mind, from the manifest beliefs of the inherited parameters by referring to those complexities as systems, because doing so will increase the inaccuracies and the tolerance magnitude in the process. It does not reduce the tolerance magnitudes of the residual inaccuracies. So, to suggest the earlier people's imagination was not inspired to write text, to erect stained glass edifices, to build mosques and cathedrals as places of worship would be insulting to their intelligence. Yet, unfortunately, to all subsequent generations, the referential resource that inspired those results omitted by default slave mentality the universe and unity as a generalized eternal patterning integrity. And so, metaphysical intellect as a function of comprehensive universe, which combines physical universe and metaphysical universe, mindfully of generalized universe relies on synergetics to clarify what a system is. As intellect realized, the PRJWBC schemes are conflicting premises. Premise in this context is as a verb, not necessarily premise as a noun. In this case, premise means what was set forth beforehand as a supposedly valid, unarguably, albeit purely imaginary, explanation for superficially and officially enlightening the story-loving observers who still listen and read the disseminated content without having to think too deeply about where, when, why, who, and what was missing from the information-gathering, local problem-solving elaboration. Comprehension was put on an indefinite hold, maybe a holding pattern, until such time that could not even be officially imagined, because that would cause the mind to question the validity of the ancient claim without having to substantiate the field of its cosmic form abilities. Bucky Fuller's lifelong quest to discover nature's coordinate system obviously inspired his own mind to satisfy personalized questions of God when he concluded, from experimental observations, and geometric models of universe's all-space-filling system field, that zero pulsation in the vector equilibrium is the nearest approach humans will ever know to eternity in God, which I have renamed the eternal omniscient mind, Eom. Surely, he did not have my specific curiosity along those lines in mind, but oddly enough, besides being inspired by his written words, his demonstrations of those geometries on the auditorium stage as one of many who attended the lectures, my intuition trusted the experience enough to declare my intention to write referentially to Synergetics with peace in mind. To be continued in Part 2, Episode 56. Thank you.